Hi, good morning Year 11. Welcome back to college and straight into a really important GCSE, English Language Paper 1. This is the first English language paper obviously that you're doing, and at this stage you won't have banked any marks for English language, so this is a new GCSE really starting today, and I'm going to give you some basic tips and guidance for this paper. Okay, so this is an exam that everyone's going to really give their best shot. You've been practicing the skills and thinking about how to answer these questions and do this writing for all of your school life really, because a lot of the foundations for this started back in year 2 and 3 really. So a reminder of what we're doing, the absolute basics. This is a 1 hour 45-minute exam, so your timing needs to be according to that. There are 2 sections to this paper. As you know, there is section A, which is reading and follows an insert, the comprehension questions, and we'll go through each of those in a minute. The total amount of time you want to spend is up to 15 minutes for reading and then 45 minutes to answer the questions, all right, which takes you up to the hour mark. And then the section B is a 45 minutes creative task, where you either write a description or a narrative story or a combination of the two given the prompt. So after the invigilator has given the go-ahead for the exam to start and you've completed the front of your booklet, I recommend the first thing you do here is probably look through the paper and just scan the questions. Make sure that you're familiar with them. They're going to be formatted in exactly the same way as you're seeing in front of you now. So question 1 will always be list 4 things and you'll be given the space to do that. Question 2 is analysis of language and the extract comes from the insert, 8 marks. Question 3, and then you have space to write your answer obviously. Question 3 is structural analysis, whole of the extract, 8 marks. And then question 4 is a 16-mark question that asks you to normally concentrate on the second half of the extract that you're given and evaluate the statement. And it is worth reading particularly that question and maybe highlighting the focus of that question just to keep your mind on track. You'll know that there are certain things that maybe you're looking out for. In this particular example, this idea of pure excitement, very disappointed. So there's always one idea maybe being countered by another idea. There are always 2 elements to the statement and it's worth having a look at that. Then your section B, and you might decide you want to do the creative writing section first. It is up to you. You can choose how to manage this exam. It's worth 40 marks in one go, so we have a 40-mark answer. The question is always delivered around either a description or a story, but mainly the examiner will be looking for those creative writing skills to come through, and you'll be expected to plan a little bit and to make sure that you've checked your work carefully for technical accuracy. So we're going to look at each of those questions carefully now. Okay, so once you've looked at the questions and familiarised yourself with the paper, if you're starting with reading or at the time you do your reading, this insert then is going to be your reading. 15 minutes worth of time is allocated for that. And you can see in the opening at the top, what I would do is take a highlighter and I would just underline or highlight the things that are important here, that we're told it's an opening of a novel. We might decide that we want to highlight the author's surname so that we can keep track of that, where it might be set, and who the principal characters are. Here we have a 13-year-old boy and a university professor who might be quite different. We read through the extract carefully, and one thing that can be very useful, particularly if you find it difficult to follow the story, is to read slowly and make sure that you write in the margin focus on or flashback or something that you know is going to be important for later questions. So once you've read, you set the inserts to the side, ready to start answering the questions, and we'll have a look at those tips now. Okay, so finally, just a few reminders on each of the questions, maybe 1 or 2 tips. The first question is going to ask you to list 4 things from probably the very first part of the extract, or the source, and you simply write them down one after the other here. In bullet points, you can quote or you can use your own words, whatever is quickest. Question 2 will ask you to write about language, words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. And the ones that I've highlighted there are the most important. So certainly underline the highlight the focus of the question, and then make sure that it's words and phrases and language features and techniques that take up most of your answer. So zoom in on specific words, things like simile, metaphor, personification, repetition and lists are also useful. Anything where you can explore the way the writer uses language. All right, and your aim there is to write 3 quotations at least, with 3 things about each quote. For question 3, this is the structure question, and it's best not to overcomplicate this. So again, we want 3 things. It's marked in the same way as question 2, but this time it's about how the structure works to interest readers. Again, 8 marks, no more than 10 minutes, please. The easiest thing to get a good quick mark here is to write about the very beginning of the extract and how it's a hook. Very, very likely you'll get the extract opening with something in it that engages a reader. It could be a surprise or a mystery. It could be something unexplained. It might be reference to a conflict or a new beginning or a new start. So we want to identify that and quote it and say that that's an effective hook. It doesn't matter if the text comes from later on in the novel. This one and most are from the opening. It's still, you treat it like its own little mini story. You focus on other shifts and then the ending, and that will get you a good mark just with those 3 things. Other things to consider perhaps might be questions or gaps left for the reader, flashbacks, repeated ideas and turning points. These are the moments where you can obviously see a change in the tone or introduction of an important new character or something that surprises us. All right, so that's question 3. And then question 4 is worth 20 marks. It's very important, and this is the question where you show off everything that you've done in all of your school life on comprehension, because this is the culmination of all those things. You're going to get given a specific section, normally the second half of the extract, and then a student will say something, and the student's statement will always have 2 components to it. All right, so here we've got pure excitement and very disappointed, and we need to make sure that we've got evidence to support both points or to counter it, because you are arguing effectively to what extent you agree. All right, and the same sorts of things that we use for question 2 and 3 are important here. Language analysis and structure are your friends. All right, and I'm recommending that if you have time, a little grid that doesn't take you more than a minute or 2, where you've put pure excitement, number 1, very disappointed, number 2, and you have your quotes like so. And then you can write your paragraphs either down the columns or across the rows. It doesn't matter too much. And that's 20 marks. So you're expecting to write 4 good paragraphs probably there, and potentially use maybe 6 quotations throughout the whole piece. All right, when you finish there, we'll move on to writing. Okay, so if you're doing the paper in order, this is the final section, and it's worth half of the marks. So you must make sure that you've allowed 45 minutes at least to complete this. The writing section is either a description or a story, and you will be given the choice either or. So make the decision based on how you're feeling and the picture perhaps as a stimulus, and think about how the practice that you've done will help lead to a really good piece of writing. At the college, we've taught you how to use a photo album concept, so that you've got this story almost pre-built, where you find the photograph that's in the exam in an attic or on the floor or somewhere else, but you don't need to use that. As long as you've practiced and use what you practice, and that you're careful about things like paragraphing, and as careful as you can be about things like spelling and punctuation as well. All right, we're not expecting anyone really here to fill out all of the pages in the answer booklet. Either they provide you 7, well, for the additional 9 pages. I'm suggesting that you aim for 3. All right, you can still get a good mark with 2.5, but I would want you to aim for 3. But just as important as the length is the number of paragraphs, so I would expect you to be looking at somewhere between 6 to 8 paragraphs. You take 45 minutes over this, try and find some of those similes and metaphors that you've been practicing, try and create a sense of mood or atmosphere, and engage the reader. If you decide to use the description task, you still can use things like storytelling devices, like a character, for example. And if you decide to use the story task, we would absolutely expect you to still be describing something, such as a character, or the image in the photograph in lots and lots of detail. So check your work carefully. So a plan would be useful, and then 5 minutes at the end potentially to check over your work and make sure you haven't made any silly mistakes. And that's the end of the exam. Thank you very much for listening. We wish you all the best.